Quite some time back, someone I knew rang me. He wasn't a member of my church. He was a church elder in a distant church, and he wanted to see me. So I told him I'll be home in the evening. And he came home at about 9-ish. And he wouldn't come into my house. He insisted that we talk in the car. So I went to the car, and I sat in the passenger seat, and we greeted one another warmly, and then I asked, what's the problem? And he told me, I can't sleep. I thought, I think I'm the wrong person for insomnia, you know. And I asked him, why can't you sleep? He said, I'm having a recurrent nightmare. And it's been going on for a long time. Same dream each and every time. So I asked him, what are you dreaming about? He told me, every time I fall asleep, I dream I'm in a funeral. And when I look inside the casket, I'm the one inside the casket. And it's the same dream. So I usually wake up screaming. And it's actually disturbing my wife because it's recurrent and I'm not sure I'm willing to share with her. I looked at him and I wondered. So I asked him, why do you think you're having that dream? He said, I was coming so that you'd help me. I said, I can't help you until... So after we played around cat and mouse, I told him, come straight. So one day he's sitting in the sitting room, reading the papers, and here is the girl cleaning house, floor, so on. And he looked at her and desired. And well, he went on to have sex with her. And asked him, did she resist? He said, not quite, it was just that technical resistance. And from then it was daily until my leave was over. And it went on for so long I began to fear my wife would find out. So I decided the best thing was to dismiss her in a nice way. So I gave her a nice lump sum, a cash gift, and told her, please leave. And she went. So I said, go on. Then he said, about 3-4 months ago, I had a report that she died. And she died of AIDS. I said, aha. So you think. He said, I don't know how to tell my wife she's positive. I said, don't jump the gun. Have you gone for a HIV test? No. Why? I'm fearful because I know what the doctor will say. I said, don't make conclusions. Let's go to a doctor, let's find out. He said, I will not go unless you go with me. So I took him, I gave him a date the following day. I took him to Nyumbani Children's Home because they have a very efficient HIV test, the ELISA test. And I asked him to sign that I'll be the one to collect the results. So after 3 days, I waited for another. The 4th day I went down and got the test. I looked at the envelope, it was negative. Closed the envelope, and then I called him and told him, I have your results, and come and see me in the evening. Are they okay? I said, let's not discuss that over the phone, you come over. So when he drove into my compound with the car, I decided to be a bit naughty. I looked at him and said, mzee. I decided he might die before he is dead. So I told him, no, it's okay. It's negative. This is an adult man, a senior banker, married to a very beautiful woman. Both of them graduates. She's got a good job, he's got a good job. And this man started weeping. Said, oh God, I'll never do that again. I'll never do that again. Thank you for saving me twice, And I believe he was cured of it. And I asked myself, why should a church elder, a man who's been saved for so long, a man trusted in Christian circles, a man married to a very nice, beautiful woman, why should he go and mess himself with the house help? This house help hasn't gone beyond class 8. But you know, sex appeal has nothing to do with degrees. It is about contours and nice, you know, it's physical. That's what it is about sex appeal. It's all physical. It has nothing to do with degrees, diplomas, and PhDs. Hallelujah. Now, can we open our Bibles to Romans chapter 7? I would like to read just a few scriptures because I've got a very short time. Romans chapter 7, and I would like you to see what Paul says from verse 15 to 25. Romans chapter 7, from verse 15 to 25. This is what it says. I'm reading my King James Version. You follow in your modern version. For that which I do, I allow not. For what I would, that I do not. But what I hate, that do I. If then I do that which I would not, I consent unto the law that is good. Now then, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwells in me. For I know that in me, that is, in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing. For to will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good, I find not. For the good that I would, I do not. But the evil which I would not, that I do. Now, if I do that I would not, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwells in me. Listen to verse 21. I find then a law, that when I would do good, evil is present with me. For I delight in the law of God after the inward man. Notice verse 23. But I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind, and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. Verse 24. O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death? I thank God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then with the mind, I myself serve the law of God, but with the flesh, the law of sin. Now, this is what Paul is saying. That as a Christian, I know what is right and wrong. But I find myself doing the things I do not allow. My mind knows this is wrong. And the things that my mind knows this is wrong, those are the things that I do. And the things that I know are right, and I accept I should do those things. The things that I should do, I don't do those things. But the things that I should not, those are the ones I do. And he says, I know where the problem is. The problem is that I'm trapped in a body that is still sinful. My spirit is saved. My flesh is not saved. So the root cause of sexual impurity, the root cause is that our physical bodies have not been saved as yet. They will be transformed at the second coming of Christ, when these vile bodies shall be transformed into immortal bodies. But until that time, we struggle with the sin that is in us. Hallelujah. So the root cause is not out there, it is in here. If there is a place we are going to deal with, it's not out there, it's in here. Now, the way that man was created by God, it's natural for a person to desire and to admire the opposite sex. That's a given, that's a God-given gift. It's in us. And in the proper context, it's okay. Like when you desire to have a wife, and there's a particular person that you desire to be your spouse, that desire it's positive, and especially when it is well expressed. And it is in us. However, because of the fall of man, that natural good desire that was originally placed in us by God has been distorted. it is still in us, but now in a distorted form. So not only do we desire the woman we want to marry, speaking from a man's perspective, but any good-looking woman that fits the mental shape in our mind of what's beautiful, we still find ourselves desiring. I would still want to find out the man who's never looked at another woman and said, "Mwah." Every man has what he thinks is beautiful. It's something called sex appeal. I mean, some women will just cut, but others, even if you are whipped. I don't know if some of you have looked at these women in French catwalks. They are so thin and they are said to be beautiful. I wonder, these people are so stout. Probably from Africa, where you like the plump one. So it's a distorted natural attraction. I would like you to know that sex will not happen unless the mental trigger triggers the system. So sex begins in the mind. When the trigger in the mind is triggered, then we are on, and the system begins to come on. So if it were possible for human beings to have control of the switch and keep it off all the time, it would never happen. Unfortunately, we don't have that switch. And it's triggered in many ways. Of course, one of the ways is by looking at an attractive woman. That's from, once again, from a man's point of view. And if she's the shape and the size you like, that's good. If it's not controlled at that point, it goes further to what we call lust. And that's what I'm going to be talking about most of the time. There is a natural appreciation of a well-groomed, good-looking woman. But the next step is not just admiring the well-groomed woman, but wanting to take possession, wanting to have sex with her. Now, we are now talking about lust. And as I said, it is triggered mostly by the eyes, but not always, but by the eyes. Seeing an attractive woman or a sexually provocative dressing, Like in one time in our church, very many years ago, one of our choir members was a beautiful girl, but a naughty girl. And she came with see-through clothes, There was a flimsy material where you could see the underclothes. And I noticed everybody was trying to sing, "Mungu yu mwema." Of course, I realized she did that deliberately. And thank God a few women stood up and called her aside. I wasn't very innocent either. And thankfully, they took her out and asked her either to wear a lesso or go back home and dress properly. I thanked God for them. They helped us out. The worship service was going on, Well, these are facts, So, sexually provocative dressing can trigger the mind. I mean, one time you're on your laptop doing something and then you look and you forget the laptop. The mind has been triggered in the wrong direction. And from then on, it's sex. It doesn't matter whether the person is, once it's triggered sex, the mind is on sex gear because the triggering has been put on. It's also on talk. There are sometimes you can trigger somebody's mind by sexual talk, especially on the phone. I don't know what to say this. A certain person was very annoyed, He came to me with an SMS from his wife's phone. And what was, I won't say what was in it, but the talk on it was so sexually explicit. And we had a difficult time trying to sort it out. Because the wife said, "How do I stop somebody writing me an SMS? Just because it's been written me does not mean that I had provoked it, And we had to leave it at that and give her the benefit of doubt. But these SMSs are dangerous. If you get one like that, please delete it immediately. It can cause family distress.
If nothing else.
So there are some SMSs, especially if the person writing it is an admirable person, it triggers your mind in the wrong direction, especially when it is sexually explicit. Inaweza kusumbua siku mzima. And then of course we have the problem of pornography. And this is an unfortunate happening in this country. I didn't realize there's so many pornographic, DVDs. And of course the phones that we now have, can go to internet and download any garbage that you want. I was in a traffic jam at Huru Highway. I just switched off the engine. I mean, it was a bumper to bumper jam. And there came these fellows who are walking hardware shops, He's got everything. So he had some calendars and I wanted to buy one for the office. And I bought the calendar. He told me, I also have some DVDs. Do you want one for James Bond? I said, I'm a bit more grown for James Bond. But if you have some for wildlife, I'll be interested. He said, I don't have one for wildlife. Lakini mzee, I have a hot one. I said, yeah, hot? Yeah, I said, can I show you? He said, yeah, sure, let's see. And out came a DVD with a very dirty porn. I said, no, that's too hot for me. And I said, on the streets, we are selling pornographic videos. I want to go further, but I'm realizing there are very many problems with pornography. We have had one family in another church break down because the husband kept on watching pornography every night. He would just lock the wife in and the children, put it there, until one time he forgot to lock in the wife. And she came out and she sat behind him and just watched what was watching. And after it all, she told him, look, I'm here and I'm better than this, This is real, that's false, Why don't you come? And pornography also triggers the mind in the wrong direction. There's also something else. Long denial, because sex is an appetite, just like food. When you are hungry, when you need food, the body feels hungry. So it's a warning that you need to replenish with something. Sex also, denied for a long time, will disturb you. You keep on thinking about sex, especially if you're married and for some reason or other, you're separate from your wife for a long period. You begin to think about sex. And that's why we have a problem in our prisons with the prisoners that have been kept there for long, and it's now gone into perversion. Prisoners, sailors, and so on. And even in some married families, you'll find that for some one reason or another, I would still like to find the man who's never been told once no. I think once in a while we get told no, and then you have to accept the no. But if it's prolonged for a long time, a month and so on, it can be a problem. I had one who came to me, anyway, we sorted it out, but that can also be a problem. So those are the triggers. Those are the triggers. If we can get control of that trigger, then we are okay. Now, the question is, why should married people have a problem with sexual immorality? I would have thought if you desire it, there's a God-given way to satisfy yourself. You would think that married people would be the most faithful of people. In fact, the reverse is true. Young and married people are more faithful than married people, especially in today's Kenya. You've seen in television, wacha mpango wa kando, which means nationally we've recognized this is a problem. That's why we are putting it on television. It's a dilemma we have to deal with. Now, on James, the book of James, chapter 1. James chapter 1. I would like you to see a process here from verse 13. 13. James chapter 1 from verse 13 to 16. James chapter 1, verse 13 to 16. Let no man say when he's tempted, I am tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when lust has conceived, it brings forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, brings forth death. Do not err, my beloved brethren. Now, there's a process here. There's the temptation, the acceptance, and then the conceiving of how to fulfill it, the actual performance, which is all sin. The wages of sin is. But you go through 4 points very quick. Now, the first thing you should know is that lust is stirred by something you desire. Unless that person is desirable to you, you will never lust for that person. So that person has no problem. The problem is within you. You begin to lust for someone. When you see that person, you find that person attractive, and the look goes beyond a casual look. It is now a sexually desiring look. And women can tell. I've heard women say, which means the look was very hungry, you know. You can see the look is not a colleague look. It's a you get the point. You get the point. So unless that person is attractive to you, you'll not be triggered. Number two, this is where I would like you to find out, to note that lust thrives on fantasy. Lust thrives on fantasy. It is deception. This is how it looks. You look at that woman and you think with her it will be more spiced than with mama, because mama, you know, you're used to her and it's always routine. But here, it looks like it might be hot stuff till morning, you know. It's a fantasy, you know. It's not real. And sometimes it can be so disappointing when you find out in reality it's not what you expected. You know, that's what lust does. It gives you pictures, you know, it plays a video in your mind of how she'll receive you, how she'll kiss you in such a hot manner. It will be sizzling hot, you know, and only to find she even doesn't know how to kiss, you know. So the reality and the imagination. Lust is deceptive. It thrives on fantasy, on deception, on imagination. It's not true. You are living in a fantasy world. It's not true. What you're thinking, well, it might be better than true, but many times it's fantasy. It's a video in the mind. And also lust tends to be absorbing. What do you mean? It preoccupies the mind. When you're triggered about a certain person and you don't deal with it, you begin to see her even in your working moments, you know? You stay a bit and you're thinking about her, and there goes an SMS. You know, you're still thinking about her, there goes a phone call, you know? Because she preoccupies your mind. You know, your mind is on having her. And unless you deal with it, it can be so preoccupying, it distracts you from what you're doing. I don't know whether you've seen, well, I used to see this in class when one of my friends has hit it with the girls in the opposite hostel. And you'll see somebody there, we are doing geography, but everyone, what is there to smile about geography? We are doing about Colombia, you know, and you give him a nudge, hey, and I say, well, and on a date. So, you know, he is not on geography, he's on, you know, it's preoccupying him. And unless taken care of, it can actually affect your performance, your work performance. Number 4, eventually, lust must be provided for. If it is continued and if it is nurtured, it will find gratification. And that's where now we come into greater deceit and deception. Because if the other person is also sending the right signals, you're sending signals, you're getting the right signals, now begins deception. You begin to look at a private place to do it. You begin to cheat your wife, you are working late. You begin to say that my friend has had an accident in Machakos, I'm going to see him. But it's another accident, you know. So those are the kind of things that we do. I would like to put it this way. That craving will never go and leave you on its own. It will never depart on its own. Listen, God will not take it away. And here we sometimes have a spiritual aspect where the devil, the direction mechukua, he becomes a catalyst. He over-exaggerates it in your mind so that your mind is burning now with lust, you know, where lust reaches uncontrollable levels, you know, you must have what you desire. You have to deal with it. Now, Job 31 verse 1. Let me just read that one, and then the other ones I'll just quote. Job 31 verse 1. What does it say? Job 31 verse 1. This is what Job said. I made a covenant with my eyes. Why then should I think upon a mate? Now this is what he said. I made an agreement with my eyes that I'm not going to look at a woman lustfully. When I see a beautiful woman, I have agreed with my eyes. Turn away. You know? Now, what am I talking about? It's decision. Let's not spiritualize some things. Here it is a decision. You make a decision that because I know evil abides in me, and that I'm not so strong, and that I can fall like any other man, I am not going to entertain those things in my mind. When it comes, I'll nip it at the bud before it grows and grows roots and brings up fruit. So I'll nip it at the bud. When I look at a woman and I find I'm getting attracted, I'll say to my heart, yes, she's good, but she is not your wife, and adultery is wrong. God hates adultery, and you turn off. Here, pana ya kuomba na kufast. Oh no, it's a decision. You have to make a drastic decision, because when you're fasting and praying and you've not dealt with the root cause, you'll be still thinking about her. The root cause of immorality, it's lust in the mind. It can be dealt with. We have two examples of a man called Joseph. Potiphar's wife wanted him for a long time, but he was able to say, how shall I do this wickedness and sin against my God? He saw her in relation to God. If he saw her in relation to himself, man would have said, bahati yangu. But here, he saw something different. He saw God in the equation and said, yes, it's being offered. I could, and I'll be king in this house. But I will be at loggerheads with God. I would rather be at loggerheads with a woman, but be at peace with God. He saw it in a different perspective. We see King David. King David sees a naked woman. He should have gone down, because when he was going up to the roof, there wasn't sex in his mind. But he sees this woman bathing. He should have come down immediately. But instead of coming down immediately, he entertained a second, a third, a fourth look, and lust rose from his heart. Even when his servants told him, that is Uriah's wife, your one of your soldiers' wives. You know, lust had so consumed him, he said, you bring her. You know, there was only one thing that would be satisfying, and that is having sex with Bathsheba. We have to make a decision. The Bible says in Romans chapter 5 verse 6, 13, if you put to death the flesh through the Holy Spirit, in Galatians 5, 16 and 17, it says, walk in the Spirit and you shall not fulfill the desires of the flesh. I could quote many more scriptures. It also says in Romans that the carnal mind is enmity with God. If you entertain a carnal mind, you shall die. But if you entertain a spiritual mind, you shall live. How do we deal with the problem? We deal with it as soon as it arises. Nyonga kabla haijapata mizizi. And say no. It pays very badly. God bless you. Amen.